Picture this. It's the hottest week of July, sun burning through the sky like a blowtorch, the kind of heat that makes the air itself ripple and the asphalt soften beneath your shoes. Kids are screaming in the distance, splashing in water that glitters like broken glass under the blistering afternoon light. Neighbors laugh, lifeguards whistle. The smell of sunscreen and chlorine drifts through the air. Everyone in my neighborhood is cooling off at the community pool. Everyone except me. I'm standing on the sidewalk, sweat dripping down my back, staring at a freshly printed sign taped to the gate with cheap HOA tape. Pool access suspended for resident Greg Hayward. Violation of Community Behavior Code. My name, printed in bold black letters like a wanted poster. The lifeguard won't meet my eyes. Kids I've known for years whisper behind their hands. A couple I've helped fix a fence for actually turn their backs. And standing there like a queen surveying her kingdom is Cassandra Shaw, HOA president, sunglasses reflecting the water she believes she owns. Her lips curl into a smile so smug it makes my blood boil. She lifts her clipboard and taps it twice, like she just executed a checkmate. According to her, I threatened community harmony. My crime? Asking why our HOA fees tripled in 9 months and why half the neighborhood still didn't have working pool lights, sprinklers, or clean gutters. But while Cassandra thought banning me from the pool would embarrass me into silence, she forgot one thing. I'm not a man who folds. I'm a man who pays attention. And standing outside that gate, sweating under the 100-degree sun while kids splashed behind her, I noticed something she didn't expect me to notice. Not the fine print on the band notice, not the whispers, not even the $300 citation she shoved into my hand. What I noticed was the tiny serial number on the water pump system behind the pool fence. A number that didn't match the city system, a number I'd seen before, a number that told me the most important detail of all. The HOA didn't own the water system, they leased it. And if you know who owns a system, you know who can buy it. Cassandra thought she'd humiliated me. She thought she'd made an example out of me. She thought she'd turned the neighborhood against me. She had no idea she'd just given me the blueprint for her downfall. Because when the HOA banned me from the pool, I bought the water system that feeds the entire community. And then I shut it down. Not out of spite, though believe me, I earned the right, but because suffering teaches lessons that comfort never can. And Cassandra Shaw was long overdue for a lesson. My name is Greg Hayward, homeowner, husband, father, mechanic, not a man of many enemies. But the HOA made one hell of a mistake when they chose to become mine. The day the HOA banned me from the pool wasn't just hot. It felt personal, like the sun itself was angry at me. I walked back home with the kind of slow-burning humiliation that settles in your bones and refuses to leave. My wife, Emily, saw the notice in my hand before I even reached the porch. She stepped out with a glass of iced tea, worry lines forming between her eyebrows. "Greg," she said softly, "tell me you didn't get into it with Cassandra again." I wished I could have. I wished I could have said this was about a simple argument. But what I held wasn't a warning. It was a public execution. I handed her the notice and watched her face fall as she read, "Suspended for conduct disruptive to HOA authority. Not disruptive to residents, not unsafe, not aggressive, just disruptive to HOA authority." The kind of language dictators use when someone asks too many questions. And I had asked questions. For months, our dues had skyrocketed. Pool repairs were delayed. Playground equipment had been awaiting budget approval for 6 months. The HOA newsletter boasted about new landscaping projects, yet half the shrubs were dead. When I emailed Cassandra a simple request for an itemized expense report, which by law I'm entitled to, she responded with a tone dripping in sarcasm. If you're confused about how community governance works, please attend an orientation meeting for new residents. I'd lived there for 14 years. She'd been in charge for 3. But I didn't push. At least not until the third HOA fee increase hit and the pool lights for the sixth time in 2 years still didn't work. That's when I attended a board meeting and asked a polite, reasonable question. Can residents see where the money is going? Cassandra's jaw clenched. Her pen snapped, and she spent the next 10 minutes explaining why ordinary people had no business questioning complex financial logistics. 2 residents nodded like obedient puppies, but others shifted in their seats. They were curious too. Cassandra sensed it. And when insecure leaders feel their grip slipping, they attack the loudest voice first. That voice was mine. Back home, my wife placed her hand on my arm. "We'll fight this," she said, but her tone cracked. Emily has always been calm, rational, the one who keeps me grounded. But Cassandra's power came from the fact that she didn't follow rules. She bent them until they snapped. And the notice in my wife's hands was proof. My daughter Lily came downstairs asking if we could go to the pool after dinner, totally unaware her father had been exiled like some kind of neighborhood criminal. Emily squeezed my hand before I could answer. "Let's go tomorrow, sweetheart," she said gently, ushering her away. That moment, my daughter excited about the pool, not knowing I was banned from the one place she loved the most. That was the moment something inside me hardened. Later that night, unable to sleep, I walked back to the pool. Not inside, just close enough to see the shimmering blue water through the fence. It mocked me. Kids would be back tomorrow. Neighbors would gossip. Cassandra would savor every second. And that's when I noticed it. A metal box beside the pump house. A brand label I recognized from work. Hathaway Municipal Systems. They make industrial water controls, not HOA grade ones. I stepped closer. The serial plate was scratched but visible. Property of Hathaway Municipal Systems, equipment on lease. Leased. Not owned by the HOA. And with my mechanical background, I knew exactly what that meant. The HOA paid a monthly contract for the privilege of using this system. If someone else bought that contract, ownership transferred automatically. I stepped back in disbelief. It felt like the universe had handed me a loaded slingshot aimed straight at Goliath's forehead. The next morning, while Cassandra strutted around the pool wearing a sun hat bigger than her personality, pretending she owned the water itself, I was on the phone with Hathaway. I expected resistance, maybe legal complications. Instead, the representative looked up the equipment ID and said, "Oh, that unit's due for renewal next quarter. And honestly, the HOA has been late on 3 payments." I smiled. "So, hypothetically," I asked, "could someone buy out their contract?" There was a long pause. Then the rep said the words that changed everything. "If you match the remaining balance, yes. Ownership transfers to you immediately." The universe didn't hand me a slingshot. It handed me a cannon. But vengeance, as satisfying as it sounds, has to be patient. I didn't want to shut anything down yet. Not until Cassandra committed the final mistake. The mistake that would expose her, humiliate her, end her reign. And believe me, she was about to hand me that mistake on a silver platter. Because the HOA ban wasn't her endgame. It was the opening shot. And she was about to escalate in ways that would make everything so far look like child's play. And when she did, I would be ready. Cassandra didn't waste any time showing me just how far she was willing to go. Less than 48 hours after banning me from the pool, a bright yellow envelope appeared on my door. One of those urgent notice packets that HOAs love to weaponize. Emily handed it to me like it was a venomous snake, and honestly, it might as well have been. Inside was a violation report so absurd it bordered on comedy. Unauthorized decorative display. Decorative display? It took me a second to realize what they meant. My daughter's chalk drawings. Lily had spent the previous afternoon covering our driveway in colorful swirls, flowers, and stars. A 9-year-old's masterpiece. Cassandra had photographed the artwork, printed the photos, and attached them to the violation notice like she had uncovered a federal crime. I could almost hear her voice. "Neighborhood aesthetic is important, Gregory." She always called me Gregory, even though no one else on this planet does. Gregory sounded like a man who collected stamps in a quiet basement. Greg was me, a guy who works with his hands and doesn't buy into HOA theatrics. The notice demanded I power wash the driveway immediately or face escalating fines over chalk drawings from a child. It wasn't just petty, it was a warning shot. Emily's eyes filled with tears, not because of the chalk, but because she knew what this meant. "She's targeting us," she whispered. "She wants us out." And Emily wasn't wrong. That afternoon, 3 neighbors messaged us privately with screenshots of the HOA Facebook group. Cassandra had posted a passive-aggressive rant about residents who refuse to follow guidelines and dangerous attitudes spreading through the community. Most comments kissed her ring, but a few, just a few, expressed confusion and concern. Cassandra pounced on them immediately, shutting down any dissent. She was tightening her grip, and I could feel the community starting to split, those who lived in fear of her and those who were beginning to resent her. That resentment was going to matter. Just not yet. Later that week, things escalated again, this time with something serious. A general notice went out to the whole neighborhood claiming that a resident, unnamed but obviously me, had been displaying aggressive behavior near the pool. The accusation was a lie, a deliberate, calculated smear. She wanted people to fear me. Fear makes neighbors compliant. Fear makes people look away. And fear isolates the target. By evening, whispers had already started circulating, small clusters of neighbors giving me side glances, some avoiding eye contact entirely. It was subtle but unmistakable. Cassandra's narrative was spreading. She wasn't just banning me, she was rewriting who I was, turning me into the villain so she could play the hero. But the thing about villains and heroes, it's all about perspective. And the truth has a way of clawing its way back to the surface. The real breaking point came with the next letter, this one heavier, more official looking, an emergency maintenance fee increase. A $240 mandatory charge per household for critical pool infrastructure upgrades. And the timing? Conveniently right after she banned me. I wasn't the only one who noticed. Within hours, the neighborhood group chat, the unofficial one, Cassandra couldn't control that one, lit up with people complaining. Where is this money going? Why wasn't this discussed? What emergency? A few bold residents even asked if the board had approved the fee. Cassandra replied with a cold, dismissive message. Board decisions do not require public explanation. Your cooperation is expected. Expected, not appreciated, not requested. Expected. People don't like being treated like subjects, especially people paying HOA dues. I sat back in my chair for a long time after reading that message, considering something I hadn't allowed myself to fully acknowledge before. This wasn't going to stop. Cassandra had tasted power, and she liked the flavor. She wasn't just enforcing rules. She was ruling the neighborhood. The ban from the pool, the lies about me, the fines, the intimidation, the manipulation. All of it was part of a pattern. And she had no idea I'd found her Achilles heel. The pool water system, leased, neglected, and soon to be mine. But before I made a move, I needed more information. I needed to know just how deep Cassandra's control went. So I attended the next HOA community meeting, their first open session in 6 months, and the moment I walked in, I could feel the temperature drop. Cassandra sat at the head of the long table wearing a blazer that probably cost more than the pool pump. 2 board members flanked her, both the type who nodded before she even finished speaking. About 30 residents filled the folding chairs. Some looked angry, some looked bored. Some looked like they just wanted to get home and watch Netflix. Cassandra spotted me and smiled, but not the friendly kind of smile. More like the smile a cat gives a mouse when the hole in the wall finally collapses. Gregory, she purred into the microphone, Glad you could join us. Please remember to remain civil during tonight's discussion. Civil, my blood simmered, but I stayed quiet. Because this wasn't the moment to strike. This was the moment to observe. The meeting spiraled quickly into a circus. Residents asked reasonable questions. What's the emergency fee for? Why were we banned from accessing financial records? Why are there rumors about aggressive behavior at the pool? And every time Cassandra dodged, deflected, redirected. She dismissed concerns with condescension. She interrupted people. She silenced anyone who challenged her. And when a young mom stood up and said she felt uncomfortable with how one particular family was being treated, Cassandra shut her down so hard the room collectively winced. That's when I realized something important. People weren't afraid of me. They were afraid of her. And that meant one thing. When she fell, people wouldn't defend her. They would celebrate. As the meeting wrapped up, Cassandra delivered one final insult. "Oh, and before we adjourn," she said, scanning the room with mock sweetness, "I should clarify that residents who are temporarily suspended from amenities should avoid the pool area entirely. Some of us are trying to maintain a peaceful environment." A few people looked at me. One woman shook her head in disgust. Not at me, but at Cassandra. The tide was shifting. Walking home that night, the air heavy with humidity and the smell of grilled food wafting from a nearby yard, something in me clicked. Cassandra had overplayed her hand. She'd gotten greedy, sloppy, reckless. She believed she was untouchable, and the pool, the symbol of her power, the place she loved to parade her status, was about to become her downfall. Because the water system, the one she needed, the one she assumed she controlled, the one she raised fees to repair, it wasn't hers, not anymore. By the end of next week, it would belong to me. And when I shut it down, legally, publicly, undeniably, the entire neighborhood would finally see who the real problem was. Cassandra thought she had power, but she had no idea what was coming. The morning I decided to buy the water system, the neighborhood was still half asleep. Dew clung to the grass, sprinklers ticked rhythmically in the distance, and the pool shimmered under the early sun like a jewel Cassandra believed she owned. I stood across the street, sipping my coffee, watching her stroll around the pool deck with a clipboard with the sunglasses like she was inspecting a resort she built with her own hands. Her confidence made me smile, not out of admiration, but because she had no idea how fragile her little empire truly was. And she had no idea that this quiet, ordinary sunrise would become the beginning of her downfall. At 8:02 a.m., I dialed Hathaway Municipal Systems. The representative, Cheryl, remembered me instantly from our earlier conversation. She sounded tired, as if she'd spent a year dealing with sloppy HOAs. But when I mentioned the equipment ID again, her tone sharpened. "Oh yes," she said, "the Willowbrook lease. They're behind on payments again." I asked her to check the remaining balance. Papers shuffled on her end. Fingers tapped keys. A few seconds later, she said the number. A large number. Not devastating, but enough that I understood why Cassandra had been squeezing residents with emergency fees. She wasn't paying for landscaping or repairs. She was patching financial holes. Holes she dug herself. "Can the lease be transferred?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "Of course," Cheryl replied. "Whoever pays the balance becomes the legal contract holder." "And ownership?" "Ownership transfers automatically. You'd control the system entirely." I felt something deep inside me settle, a sense of certainty, quiet and cold. "Send me the paperwork," I said. The contract arrived within minutes. Emily looked at me across the kitchen table as I read it. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. She knew exactly what I was planning. She'd seen me pushed, cornered, humiliated. She'd watched Cassandra go after our daughter's chalk art, our reputation, our peace. She knew this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming respect, protecting our family. We reviewed the documents together. It was simple, cleaner than I expected. All legal, all legitimate. No loopholes, no gray areas. The HOA's delinquent payments meant they had forfeited renewal privileges. Anyone could step in, anyone. And fate had chosen me. The moment I signed the contract and wired the funds, I felt a shift, like the ground beneath Willowbrook suddenly moved. I wasn't giddy. I wasn't shaking. It was quieter than that, deeper. A calm clarity washed through me. Something inside whispered, "You just took the queen off the chessboard without anyone noticing." 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A cheerful email from Hathaway. "Contract transfer complete. You are now the primary owner of System 48WB." Just below that, a list of legal rights I now possessed. Full authority to service, disable, or suspend the system. Direct control over all operational settings. Exclusive repair authorization. Ability to terminate HOA access if violated terms of use. Cassandra loved control. She loved forcing people to comply. But her kingdom, her pride, her weapon, was now sitting quietly in my hands. I walked toward the pool for the first time since the ban. Not to use it, not to swim, but to look, really look, at the pump house, the humming machinery inside, the pipes snaking underground, the filtration tanks, the control panel mounted on the wall behind a cheap padlock. Cassandra didn't realize these weren't hers. She thought HOA dues bought loyalty and obedience. She thought bullying made her untouchable. She thought banning me would scare me into silence. But real power doesn't come from rules, or fines, or intimidation. Real power comes from knowing something your enemy doesn't. And I knew something today. Cassandra was days away from a breakdown, and she didn't even know it. That night, I packed my garage workbench with the tools I needed, not to sabotage anything, but to prepare. I reviewed the system manual Hathaway emailed me. I studied diagrams, valve layouts, pressure controls. I learned exactly how the system functioned, how water flowed, how it filtered. The more I read, the more I understood. Even a minor shutdown would send the HOA into chaos. A full shutdown? A catastrophe. But I wasn't planning chaos. Not yet. I was planning precision. What mattered wasn't shutting down the pool. What mattered was when. Because Cassandra wasn't done escalating, I could feel it. Predators always go for one last strike before they're exposed, and she was circling my family like a hawk scanning for scraps. I just had to wait for her next mistake, the one she'd make because she believed she was almighty. And she didn't make me wait long. 2 days later, I received a certified letter, a thicker envelope this time. Emily handed it to me without a word, her jaw tightening. I tore it open at the kitchen counter, and the words nearly made me laugh out loud. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable, so perfectly Cassandra. Effective immediately, it read, "You are prohibited from hosting guests in community spaces due to ongoing behavioral concerns." Behavioral concerns. A fabricated file created by a woman who built her entire identity on lies. But that wasn't the worst part. Attached to the letter was a formal notice scheduling an administrative review of resident conduct. My conduct, schedule for next week, mandatory attendance, threats of possible fines or loss of membership privileges. It was her ultimate power play. Her attempt to humiliate me in front of the entire board, to break me, to make an example out of me so no one else dared challenge her. But she chose the wrong week. Because the administrative review, that was scheduled 3 days after I became the owner of the pool's entire water system. And if Cassandra wanted a show, oh, she was going to get one. But she wasn't going to be the star. She was going to be the lesson. The week leading up to the HOA's so-called administrative review felt like watching storm clouds gather on the horizon. Slow at first, then darker, heavier, threatening to split the sky in two. Cassandra strutted around the neighborhood as if she'd already won. She waved at people like she was running for office, whispered to board members behind cupped hands, and sent out 3 separate HOA emails in her signature passive-aggressive tone. We expect full community support as we address troubling resident behavior. Troubling behavior, meaning me, the man who dared to ask questions. But while Cassandra polished her crown, preparing to seat herself at the head of her tiny kingdom, I spent my evenings studying the machinery she didn't know I owned. The water system wasn't complicated once you understood its rhythm. Pumps hummed like a heartbeat. Filters breathed in steady cycles. Valves clicked with soft metallic certainty. It was almost graceful, like a mechanical organism keeping the pool alive. And every part of it belonged to me now. On Thursday evening, I stood in front of the pump house as the sky ripened into shades of orange and gold. A soft breeze carried the distant laughter of kids splashing in the water, the same kids Cassandra claimed I was too dangerous to be near. I rested my hand on the metal door. Behind it was the system that fed every pipe, every jet, every stream of chlorinated water. I pulled out the key Hathaway mailed me, slipped it into the lock, and opened the door for the first time. Warm, dry air rushed out. The hum of machinery wrapped around me like a greeting. Inside, everything was labeled neatly. Hathaway didn't mess around. Industrial-grade equipment, long-lasting, cleanly engineered. My eyes skimmed the control panel until I found the switch that mattered. Master Operations Control. Below it, Emergency Shutdown, authorized personnel only. Funny how simple power looks. Just a switch, just a label. But flipping that switch would do more than shut off water. It would shut off Cassandra's ego, her authority, her ability to intimidate anyone. I didn't flip it yet. Not even close. I wasn't here to cause chaos without purpose. I was here to prepare. I recorded everything with my phone, serial numbers, contract docs, the control manual, even screenshots of the lease transfer. Because when the time came and Cassandra started screaming about sabotage, I'd have a stack of evidence taller than her ego to prove I wasn't sabotaging anything. I was exercising legal ownership rights. Friday morning came with an unexpected gift. My neighbor, Mr. Thompson, the quiet retired veteran who kept to himself, knocked on my door. He held a folded piece of paper. "You should see this," he said. It was a copy of the HOA's internal agenda for the administrative review. Someone on the board had slipped it under his door, and he'd passed it on to me. My name appeared 5 times. Resident conducted unauthorized activity. Resident displayed hostility at previous meeting. Resident creating an unsafe environment. Potential removal of amenity privileges. Potential fines or probationary measures. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Cassandra was preparing to publicly convict me of crimes she invented. Emily, standing behind me, squeezed my shoulder. "Greg, this is practically slander." I nodded. "It won't matter soon." She closed her eyes. "Just don't let this change who you are." "I won't," I said, "but it will change who she thinks she is." The night before the review, I barely slept. Not because I was worried. No, because I was rehearsing every step of what needed to happen. Timing mattered. Impact mattered. Proof mattered. If I shut down the system too early, Cassandra would spin the narrative. Too late, and she'd have already humiliated me. But if I did it mid-meeting, when she was at peak arrogance, when she felt unstoppable, when the room was full, it wouldn't just embarrass her, it would expose her. Saturday arrived heavy with heat. Residents filed into the clubhouse at 2 p.m., murmuring, fanning themselves, annoyed that they had to give up their weekend for an HOA meeting. I sat near the back with Emily, calm as a man sipping lemonade. Cassandra walked in 10 minutes late, as always, because tyrants love entrances. Her hair was perfect, her blazer crisp, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. She tapped the mic dramatically. Let's begin. Today we will be reviewing ongoing behavior concerns regarding one of our residents. We expect full cooperation and silence during board statements. And then she said my name, slowly, like she was announcing a villain in a cheap drama. Gregory Miles. Gasps, whispers, shifting chairs. First concern, Cassandra continued, your recent hostility toward staff and board members. And right then, right at that moment, at the height of her power trip, I gently pressed the button on my phone that controlled the remote access switch Hathaway gave me. A half-second delay. A click. A deep mechanical sigh echoed from the pump house outside. Then the sound of rushing water halting, slurping, dying. The entire pool system shut off. Completely. Instantly. The clubhouse lights flickered. A sudden silence fell over the room. 10 seconds later, the alarms began. The pool's emergency sensors blared. The pressure dropped. The jet stopped. The filtration system froze. And through the clubhouse windows, we could see the water ripple unnaturally and settle into a weird, eerie stillness. Residents stood up. What's going on? Is the pool broken? I thought they just raised fees to fix this. Cassandra paled. She grabbed her phone, tapped frantically, shouted something at a board member, and then stormed toward the doors in a panic. People followed, a wave of bodies exiting the room to see what had happened. I followed behind them, calm, hands in my pockets. At the fence line, Cassandra stared at the pump house like it had personally betrayed her. What happened? A resident asked. Cassandra stammered. I don't know. This system is under my jurisdiction. I cleared my throat. Actually, I said, projecting my voice just enough for the gathering crowd to hear, it's under mine. She spun around. What did you say? I held up the contract, printed, stamped, notarized. I'm the legal owner of the entire water system. I purchased it from Hathaway Municipal Systems last week. The HOA was behind on payments. Gasps shot through the air. And since I own it, I continued, I'm temporarily pausing operations pending a maintenance review. You can't do this, Cassandra shrieked. Yes, I said calmly. I can. In fact, I already did. The crowd erupted. People weren't angry at me. They were angry at her. All the questions she'd dodged were resurfacing. All the lies she'd told were cracking. All the fees she'd collected were under fire. Someone shouted, Where did our money go, Cassandra? Another, You said the pool repairs were fully funded. Another, Why didn't you tell us the system was leased? Cassandra backed away, red-faced, flustered, suddenly realizing the power dynamic had shifted violently. Her kingdom had collapsed in less than 30 seconds. And she knew it. But this wasn't the ending. Not yet. Because the real downfall, the legal downfall, was coming next. The moment I told the crowd I owned the entire water system, the neighborhood shifted like a tectonic plate rolling under their feet. People didn't just murmur, they erupted. Years of frustration, unanswered emails, rising fees, and Cassandra's condescending leadership came spilling out all at once like a dam finally breaking. The sun beat down on us, sweat glistening on foreheads, but no one moved. No one walked away. They wanted answers. They demanded them, and Cassandra had none. She stood frozen, her carefully maintained confidence cracking like a porcelain vase dropped on concrete. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out, just a strangled squeak of panic. For the first time since she became HOA president, she wasn't in control, and the crowd sensed it like blood in the water. Why didn't you tell us the system was leased? Where did our dues go? You banned him for nothing. You said the pool was fully funded. My fees went up 3 times because of you. Cassandra raised her hands as if she could physically push the anger back. "Everyone, please, this is being handled internally." "No, it's not," a neighbor shouted. "You lied to us," said another. "You made up violations. You harassed his family. You banned a man over chalk." Her eyes darted back to me, desperate, pleading for some kind of lifeline. But all I did was fold my arms and let the truth settle in. She wasn't the queen of this neighborhood anymore. The crown she polished so proudly was slipping off her head, and everyone could finally see the tarnished metal underneath. A board member, Robert, the quiet one who always nodded along, finally stepped forward. He cleared his throat, voice trembling. "Cassandra, is it true? Were dues used to cover delinquent payments? Did you hide the lease?" His tone wasn't angry. It was disappointed. That was worse. Cassandra flinched like she'd been struck. I only did what was necessary," she sputtered. "We needed to protect the community. Sometimes leadership requires difficult decisions. I can't be expected to explain every detail to—" "To who?" a mother snapped. "The people paying your salary? The people funding your mess?" The crowd cheered. Cassandra's face twisted. "Your ignorance is unbelievable. None of you understand how complicated these financial systems are." But the board wasn't buying it anymore. They exchanged glances, serious, ashamed, ready. Robert lifted his chin. "We're calling an emergency board vote." Cassandra's face blanched. "You can't." "We can," Robert said, "and we must." It took less than 30 seconds. The vote was unanimous. Cassandra Fairborn Dalton was officially removed as HOA president. The air went silent, like the neighborhood itself held its breath. Cassandra stared at the board as if they had betrayed her in the most unforgivable way. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You can't do this to me." But they already had. Residents clapped. Some cheered outright. A few hugged each other as if a long, exhausting war had finally ended. For the first time in months, the air felt lighter, brighter, hopeful. Cassandra stumbled backward, her legs shaking. Emily stepped closer to me, slipping her hand into mine. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Because the final blow arrived in the form of 2 black SUVs rolling slowly down the street, windows tinted, tires crunching gravel with heavy purpose. They stopped right in front of the clubhouse. Doors opened. Out stepped 2 county investigators and a city inspector carrying a folder thick with documents. "Mrs. Dalton," one agent said. Cassandra didn't answer. "Mrs. Cassandra Dalton?" I'm not taking questions," she stammered. "I don't have to—" "This is not a question," the inspector interrupted. "This is a formal notice of investigation regarding financial misconduct, falsified maintenance records, and misuse of community funds." Her knees buckled. Someone gasped. Everyone stared. The agent continued, voice steady. "Residents filed multiple complaints regarding missing funds, unauthorized fines, and fabricated violations. We received evidence of misappropriated budget reserves. You are required to provide full accounting immediately." Cassandra shook her head in disbelief. No, this can't be happening. I built this place. I protected this community." "You abused it," a resident snapped. "You bullied people," said another. "You banned a father from his own pool." "And for what? Your ego?" As she backed away, her heel snagged the edge of the concrete. She stumbled, dropping her binder. Papers scattered everywhere. Violation notices, fee increases, budget breakdowns with suspicious numbers, circled in red. The wind carried them across the pavement like fallen leaves, exposing every secret she had tried so desperately to hide. Her empire wasn't collapsing. It was evaporating. Robert stepped forward again. "Effective immediately, all of Cassandra's decisions are suspended pending review. Greg," he turned toward me, "we'd like to restore your amenity access and offer a formal apology from the HOA." I nodded once. Thank you. But Emily squeezed my hand. She knew this wasn't about an apology anymore. This was about something bigger. The inspector handed me a sheet of paper. Mr. Miles, based on your documentation, you've played a crucial role in uncovering misconduct. If you choose to submit a formal complaint, we can pursue full charges. I glanced at Cassandra. She was on the curb now, head in her hands, her kingdom reduced to ashes around her. A few residents stood nearby, watching her, but not one person approached. Not one comforted her. Not one defended her. Emily whispered, "Do what's right." And so I handed the investigators the folder I'd prepared, the contracts, the emails, the recordings, everything. "This is my formal complaint," I said. Cassandra's head snapped up. She stared at me with raw betrayal. "You," she hissed, "you ruined everything." "No," I said softly. "You did." The investigators took the documents and walked toward the SUVs. The crowd slowly dispersed, muttering relief, shaking heads, talking about change, hope, and rebuilding. The sun dipped lower, casting warm gold across the neighborhood. Our neighborhood, not hers. Emily rested her head on my shoulder. "You did it," she whispered. "We did," I replied. "Together." And as we walked home, hand in hand, Lily ran out the front door. "Daddy, can we go to the pool now?" I laughed. "Not today, sweetheart." She pouted. "Why not?" "Because," I said, lifting her into my arms, "your daddy just shut it down." The next day, residents formed a new HOA board, transparent, honest, community first. The water system was restored after proper inspection. Fees were corrected. Records were cleared. And Cassandra? She faced the consequences she had spent years avoiding. Peace returned to the neighborhood. Balance returned to our home. And the pool finally belonged to everyone again.